Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. We've gone over the DPS, which ones are going to be good when it comes to 222. We went over the supports with KQ very recently. Now we're completing the Trinity by going over the tanks with Chronodota, going over which are the best and worst main tanks, which are the best and worst off tanks, when to play them, because even though Reinhardt, for example, might be seen as very bad, there are situations where you want to pick him up, Winston included, and just a great recap video on what heroes are good right now going into this new season. Do definitely check out Chrono. He's a top 500 player that also streams and does YouTube content, so you can find all of that in the description below. But let's get into it. We haven't had you on the channel before, Chrono, so what is your background? Where may people know you from? What have you done in the past? You know, like ratings, whether you played for teams, all those credentials, I guess it would be.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a 4.5k peak main tank player, and I've been playing in the T3 scene for quite a while. And then I've played in Contenders Season 2 in Australia with King Esports, Season 3 Contenders with Sydney Drop Bears, in which we actually won Contenders Season 3. And then 2019 Season 1, I played in NA with Second Generation. Besides that, I stream a lot, I play a lot of ladder.
And you've also hit like rank 1, and you've got, I mean, even Yeetle recommended you as being somebody that's played a lot of Sigma as well, so you're well versed in what's going on at the moment, I guess.
Oh yeah, I actually hit rank 1 on PTR Sigma, and in the first week and a half, I already had like almost 40 or 50 or 60 hours on the character, so I feel like I'm pretty well versed in the character.
And you make a couple of videos on how to improve at the game and stuff like that too. This video, we've done tier lists of sorts in previous videos with like Tavik on DPS and then Kaki recently with supports. To answer probably an obvious question for the tanks, who are the best main tank and off tank to be running right now? And why?
Okay, so right now for main tank, it's definitely Orisa. Like in the recent patch, there was a change where they changed the shield cooldown from 8 seconds to 9 seconds. But I really don't think it's that big of a deal because now you have Mei being played. And even though the shield cooldown got increased by 1 second, the Mei wall kind of lets you recharge your shield for an extra second or two. So Orisa is definitely the top tier pick right now for main tank.
And why is that? Like, why now?
Well, because with 222 luck, we've seen, especially in the Overwatch League, that it's basically a whole bunch of bunker comp. And Mei was also starting to be picked because bunker comp was so popular that the Orisa halt hook combo was so good, and that Mei is now a way to counter that. So the meta right now is basically centered all around the Orisa hog.
And I guess there's other elements too of just the amount of damage that Orisa can do to a shield, how quickly she gets her shield. They're the main 3 points, right? The damage that she can do, how quickly she can get a shield.
Yeah, basically, she's really good at holding space. Because like you said, you know, that she has the shield, a lot of shield damage, and then especially the Sokko combo. The Sokko combo is incredibly good.
And does it always have to be Roadhog that's paired with her? Because Halt Hook is very good, as you mentioned, but there have been some teams, depending on whether they have a good D.Va or Roadhog, that have been using D.Va a little bit. So in that off-tank role, is it just always Roadhog in your eyes, or can you put in D.Va or even some other heroes?
Okay, I'm really glad you actually brought that up. Because, so initially people started picking the Orisa hog because of the Sokko combo. And then people started adapting and they picked D.Va alongside it, right? So that you can eat the suck so you don't get comboed. But now that there's a 222 lock and D.Va got nerfed, now teams are, instead of running a D.Va, they're running a Mei to block the suck hook. So the suck hook combo actually isn't as good as it was before, because Mei is such a consistent way to counter it. So that's why when you play in the Overwatch League or this high level of play, basically you see that the suck hook combo is almost never going to land because of the Mei wall. So people are then deciding to run D.Va instead, because D.Va controls high grounds better than a Roadhog, and if you're not going to land the hook anyways, why not play a D.Va, right? And actually, because of that, I feel like you could actually start seeing some Sigma with the Orisa.
Now that's something that we have sort of wanted to talk about in another video, but let's go over the main tanks. Like, Orisa is like the S tier main tank, would you say? So she's like easily the best one.
Yeah, hands down.
How would you rate Reinhardt then, or Winston, or Wrecking Ball, in terms of how good they are? If you were to rate them from best to worst, how would you order them? And is Sigma on that list as well of main tanks?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider Sigma as like a main tank or an off tank, because you can like put him in as a main tank or off tank, like truthfully. Most likely though, he's best with Orisa Sigma. I guess in that case, technically, he's an off tank. But yeah, rating the characters, so Orisa definitely S tier, like I said. Secondly is probably Winston, because Winston's really good at dealing with bunker, in the sense that he has a whole bunch of AoE damage, and he's also really good with his bubble, right? Because you can LOS a Mei freeze or just like Roadhog hooks with your bubble if it's like very well timed. Then thirdly, we definitely have Hammond. He's versatile, he can take a lot of space behind the enemy, and also he can actually set up dives against a bunker comp, which is incredibly helpful. But yeah, Ryan is definitely in the last place here. He's really not very good right now in the current meta. the other main tanks just do what he does, except they do it better.
Are there sort of examples of that then? Because he's just not going to be played because the meta doesn't suit him. So I wondered, in like layman's term, why is Reinhardt not very good? Getting into specifics.
Yeah, so I mean, to understand that, you have to look at the meta overall, right? Because some metas are just more apt for certain characters to be good, and certain characters to be really bad. And right now, for example, it's just a whole bunch of bunker comp. And to counter bunker, either, you match the enemy bunker comp, so you play bunker versus bunker, or if the enemy team has like a bunker comp that's weak to dive, then you could actually make a swap to dive, and then dive them. But Reinhardt really doesn't counter bunker or dive in any way. So he's kind of like always a loser in the meta. Because speeding into an Orisa Hog comp is actually relatively hard, especially now that you can't run goats. If goats were still a viable comp, then you could still run it. But because of the 2-2-2 lock, you can't really run that super aggressive Reinhardt comp as well as you could have in the past. So it's just really not worth it at this point.
I imagine there will be cases, especially in ladder for the modes that we play, where would Reinhardt be decent to pick up? Because I'm thinking of like maybe some maps of control, like he's always been very good on Control Center Lijiang. Are there any other areas that, even though he's the worst tank to be playing, that you will go play Reinhardt here?
Well, the big thing though when you play Reinhardt is that you want to combo with a Lucio. If you don't have a Lucio with a Reinhardt, you might as well be playing Orisa because you're not going to be able to close that distance, right? So no matter what you do with Reinhardt, you always want a Lucio with it. So in that case, if you actually go like a Rein, Zarya, Lucio comp, you could run him in a lot of places. For example, like you said, these control point maps, maybe places with tight chokes, stuff like that. But you always need that Lucio. Otherwise, you're better off just picking Orisa.
And I guess a similar question for Winston and Hammond. You said that some bunker comps are very susceptible to dive. How can you see that, I suppose? What is a susceptible to dive bunker comp? What does it include?
When you're looking at what bunker comps are easily diveable, you basically want to look at their individual characters, right? So for example, a Baptiste is hard to dive into because of Immortality Field. It's going to keep his team alive for a long time. Also Ana because of the nade and this potential sleep dart. But also it also goes down to tanks, right? So an Orisa Hog comp is going to be harder to dive than, let's say, an Orisa and Sigma comp. Because Sigma and Orisa aren't very good at peeling divers. They're just kind of like, do a little bit of damage and that's it.
Would it come down to just the specific heroes that they're running, or like are there any maps that you feel would be easier to use dive on? Like I'm thinking of like Dorado as an example where, especially as you go through the map, it opens up to be more vertical, that dive makes a lot of sense to play there. Gibraltar is another obvious example of that. So I guess the obvious dive maps is where you can run Winston and Hammond.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, those are maps where you could definitely run dive, like no matter what the enemy team is playing. But yeah, there are also some maps that aren't so good for dive, but if you see that the enemy is running like a Zen Ana, for example, like the Orisa Hog aren't going to be able to really save their Zen Ana from getting dove, right? So there's still some maps, or some situations where you just want to go for the dive no matter what. Even though bunker is still better in maybe 80% of situations.
Because I feel like that's a big mistake that a lot of people can make, especially tanks that are, you almost like manufacture the composition that you're running. It's almost like you're in charge of what your team plays, because if you and a friend go Winston Diva, everybody sort of clicks, all right, we're going dive, even if the supports are something like Mercy Zenyatta as an example. If you go Orisa Roadhog, you set the the tone, I suppose, of what you're playing. So I guess it's important to know that. But just to sort of recap that, because I think this is a really important point. You can play dive. It's not just bunker comp the whole way.
Basically, the rule of thumb is that as long as you can trade out and get some kills before you die, then dive is actually playable there. So yeah, basically those like squishy supports that can't peel for themselves. But you want to be careful about a diva as well, though, because diva's matrix can actually peel the backline. So if you see a diva, you have to be a little bit more careful as well because of that.
And that's both for Winston and Wrecking Ball, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, they do a little bit different things, right? It's like Hammond doesn't have as much AoE damage, whereas Winston does massive cleave. But for example, with Winston, you can be a little bit more aggressive, I guess you could say. Because again, you can use your bubble to block hooks, to block the Mei freeze, stuff like that. Whereas Hammond, once you go in, you're in, right? You can easily get Mei frozen, hooked, slept, so many different things. So with Hammond, you have to be a little bit more cautious with how you approach the engage.
So when it comes to rating which off tanks to play, Roadhog is the obvious best one. How far is Diva and Zarya behind him?
Well, I'd say Diva and Roadhog are both basically equally viable. Because like I said, Roadhog doesn't land hooks that often because of the Mei wall, like in the current meta. So if you're not landing hooks, then you would go with Diva, right? So if you're able to land suck hook combos, then Roadhog is a better pick. But if you're finding that it's not working out, then Diva would actually be the better pick in that case. So for me, Diva and Roadhog, they're basically hand in hand. They're very similar. But as for Zarya, I actually think Zarya is the worst tank right now to be playing, to be entirely honest. Because the only reason Zarya was good before was, or the main reason I should say, is the GOATS comp. Those aggressive Rein comps aren't nearly as good as they were before. So because of that, Zarya's definitely going to take last place. She can't be played in dive, she can't be played in bunker, she can only be played with these sort of like Rein Zarya comps at the moment.
And that's for almost specific points on a map really, more than anything. Like the back end of Eichenwald's control maps like we mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Basically what we talked about with Reinhardt as well. Because basically if you're playing Reinhardt, usually you'd want to play Zarya alongside with him.
We asked a question to Karku about which combos are best and which combos are worse. I think it's quite obvious, or more obvious for tanks, that, you know, Orisa Roadhog is really good, Orisa Diva is fine. Are there any combinations that you think people may assume is quite bad, but is actually quite good?
Well, I think some of the things that people might be surprised to see, for example, is something like Hammond Sigma. Which obviously Sigma's not, you know, on live patch yet, but I think it's going to be very interesting when he does go live. Because you can have Sigma playing with the bulk of his team, having his portable shield. Then you can have Hammond on the flank doing Hammond things, of course. And that basically is Sigma anchors point, and then Hammond's allowed to make space for his team. So I think the Hammond Sigma combo is actually going to be surprisingly good. Because on the surface, right, they don't really synergize that well, right? One is a guy that shields the point, the other is someone that goes really deep, swings around the entire map. But I think there's actually some synergy there. For other comps, so because Diva got nerfed, Winston Diva isn't as good as it used to be. Because of that, I think that actually opens up space for Winston Hammond dives. Because with Winston and Hammond, you can actually hard commit. You can have your Hammond slam in, knock everybody up, then Winston gets that massive cleave damage. And I think that's also a very, very underrated combo. Well, those are the main two.
I remember Yeatle saying a while ago that he felt that that could become very meta if Wrecking Ball kept going up in popularity. So is that, I guess that's something that you agree with?
Oh yeah, 100%, especially because of Diva nerf, right? Because Diva's worse now, who else are you going to dive with as a Winston, right? It's either Diva or Hammond, usually. And Hammond is actually very, very good right now. So I'd definitely go with Winston Hammond.
And obviously there's really bad combinations that you can run, like 2 off tanks or even 2 main tanks in some cases. Are there any combinations that you see a lot of that you think are really bad that people should stop doing? Because like I said, there's really obvious combos that you shouldn't be running. Are there any of those that you still see people play?
Well, I mean, in ranked, obviously you're going to find some very, very strange compositions here and there. But off the top of my head, like the Orisa Diva, the Orisa Roadhog, the Orisa Sigma, those are all comps that make sense and they're fine. But I mean, of course you wouldn't want to play something like Winston and Roadhog, for example. Those are 2 characters that really don't do well together. But yeah, I mean, that being said, I don't see them being run too often at the Grandmaster ladder, so it's not too much of an issue at the moment.
Well, I guess that goes on to a really good point of, you know, not everybody is Grandmaster. A lot of people that are watching this video might not even get close ever, but in those cases of, say, you're in a gold match and you're trying to get better at Roadhog because he's very good right now. Your other tank picks Winston. How important is that at lower ranks? How important do you feel it is to play meta in the lower ranks? To
be entirely honest, I really don't think meta matters that much until maybe Masters rank. Because the thing is, even with, you can one-trick any character to Grandmaster relatively easily. Assuming you're a Grandmaster player, right? So, I mean, that basically proves the point that, sure, maybe playing meta is going to give you a 5% higher chance to win. But if you're actually really good at the Roadhog, for example, you could actually carry the match. And then you playing Roadhog is actually better than you playing meta. So basically, I'll just say focus on yourself, just become a better player individually, and you're just going to climb.
And is that with any of the main tanks? Because I feel like people enjoy these videos because they want to make sure that they're not wasting their time playing heroes that aren't very good, or putting themselves at a disadvantage. You know, I do that in other games too, so I understand that, but like, if somebody wants to play Winston, would you tell them not to, I guess?
Well, basically in this meta, I would say that if you're a main tank player, you should be defaulting to Orisa, right? So you should be defaulting to Orisa. So if you don't know what to do, go Orisa. But honestly, I'd say Winston and Hammond are both viable. So I wouldn't be against that. But if somebody told me that they wanted to get really good at Reinhardt, I would definitely try to discourage them from that. Because Reinhardt right now is just so far below the other main tanks in the game.
That was really good. That was actually quite useful. So going back onto the off-tank main tank list, just as a recap, how would you rate each of them when it comes to like either doing it by S-A-B-C tier or ordering them from 1 to 10 or whatever? Like, how would you rate each of the tanks, either separating them into off-tank or main tank?
Okay, so I actually made a little bit of a list to think about it, to visualize it. So for main tanks, I'd say that Orisa obviously is S tier, like we talked about earlier in the video. Then secondly is Winston, because I feel like his ability to block imported cooldowns with his bubble is incredibly valuable. Especially in a meta where, you know, you have sleep darts, you have Roadhog hooks, and stuff like that. So I think Winston is number 2, and Hammond is number 3. But I'd say Hammond and Winston are like sort of on the same level here, right? Because usually you kind of want to run them together in the Winston-Hammond dive. And they both accomplish like fairly similar things when it comes to countering dive. Or sorry, when it comes to countering bunker. Then last, like I said, is definitely Reinhardt. He struggles to find a place in the meta right now. If you do play him though, you definitely want to pick up that Lucio. Maybe you want to have a Zarya alongside it, and you just want to be aggressive. And then as for off-tanks, like we talked about, the bunker comp is the main meta right now. So D.Va and Roadhog are on an even playing field right now, in my opinion. So like I said before, just to reiterate, if you're getting value from the halt hook combos, then Roadhog is better. If you're getting your halt hook combo blocked all the time by a Mei, then you should swap to D.Va. But I'd say those are basically like equal for rank 1 for off-tanks.
I think the only thing that is a bit interesting that you've mentioned is Winston being the second best tank, even though he's got like the worst pick rate at the moment and the worst win rate too. So is that a bit of a problem? Like, I don't know how you'd sort of sum that up. It's very difficult to recommend a hero that, going off stats, is also in a pretty bad spot. So if you want to play Winston, how do you go about it?
Well, first off, because the thing is, all of this depends on the meta, right? So right now, bunker comp is meta, so characters that are good in bunker are going to be higher up on that list. So Winston is higher up on the list, but not because he fits into bunker. More so because he can counter bunker, if that makes sense. He's harder to play than an Orisa, but he's also good against bunker if you manage to actually set up a proper dive. So if you're going to play Winston, ideally you don't want to be shifting into the enemy bunker, right? Because once you jump in, you're committed. And you're going into like a Roadhog, like a Baptiste, and all those things. You really don't want to do that. Instead, you want to kind of flank around behind the enemy, or above the enemy, drop on them, use your bubble, and then once you start getting frozen or whatever, then you can just jump back out. That's the ideal way to play Winston at the moment. Unless you have a Tracer and Genji, then you could obviously press shift and go into the enemy team.
Where can people see more of you, either on YouTube, Twitch, wherever you want to promote? Where can people see you play, I guess?
Yes, I stream 5 days a week at twitch.tv/Chronodota. Then I also make educational Overwatch content on my YouTube channel, which is Chronodota again. And then you also have an Instagram, Twitter, stuff like that, and also Discord. All of those handles are at Chronodota.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. As I said, do definitely check out Chrono in the description below. And he's also got a lot of time in Sigma, so if you're interested in the new hero, definitely check him out. Thanks for watching, take care, we'll see you next time.